So there has been a lot, I mean a lot of fawning by especially Conservative supporters who almost are longing for the days of Theresa May's government. And as I've said before, Theresa May's government wasn't overly, again, a very good government. Prior to Boris Johnson literally snagging the award for Britain's worst Prime Minister, previously the owner of that was, of course, Theresa May, who herself was so weak-willed that she couldn't bring the party together. Now, of course, at the end of the day, it is the leader's responsibility to bring the party together. But again, this is the type of stuff that Cameron was afraid of. And ultimately, she was so weak-willed and unable to actually get her party together in one piece, or at least even make them realise the problems in this country and the problems that Brexit was going to be. Remember, Theresa May, I always say it back when she was there in my videos, she was always going to be the sacrificial lamb to which all the Brexiteers could all just turn around and say, see, this is not Brexit fault, it's that woman, Theresa May. That's whose fault it is. Thank God Boris came and saved us. And yet now, many of them are longing for those days to return. But we have to be careful through looking through the, those rose-tinted glasses of the May premiership. Because, again, she wasn't a very good Prime Minister. So, before we do jump into today's article, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, this comes from the New European, and the title is, Don't Forget, Don't Forgive. Theresa May was a terrible PM. There is a temptation when revisiting the tenure of a Prime Minister, widely agreed to have been a failure, to reassess it as a more successful than people believed it to be at the time. When it comes to Theresa May's premiership, which began 5 years ago this month, this temptation is well worth resisting. May might have come up with a better Brexit deal than the one than the one agreed by Boris Johnson, and might not have indulged the same types of terrible cabinet behaviour as a successor, but in many ways, big and small, it was May's mistakes that set the way for everything that has come next. Despite supporting Remain, May owed her premiership entirely to Brexit. David Cameron had pledged throughout the referendum campaign that he would continue as Prime Minister no matter the result, only to inevitably announce his resignation just hours after the result. A Leave win became clear. May managed to become the UK's political leader without even the tens of thousands of Conservative members taking a vote on whether she actually should, thanks to an absolutely shambolic 2016 contest in which her leadership rivals just dropped out amid scandal or complete disarray, or in the case of Boris Johnson, betrayed by his own campaign. Theresa May might have taken her own fragile mandate alongside the narrowness of the Leave's margin of victory to make a calculus reconciliatory path, to take a would-be Prime Minister for the whole nation, instead of the faction within a faction that ran the official Leave campaign. As we know, that's not what May did. In now what must be sure to be seen as a misguided strategy, she tried to bang the drum for the most ridiculous fringes of the Brexit faction in a bid to create political space to try and negotiate a fairly hard but actually workable Brexit deal. Even if we are generous and we assume that the strategy that was adopted with the best of intentions, it couldn't have failed more spectacularly. It was an approach that normalised and first exaggerated and then outright false claims about what it was, and achievable from different varieties of Brexit, leading to the absolute polarised climate in which discussions of any kind of trade-off rapidly got dismissed as a mere extension of Project Fear. May's hopes of turning chaos into a sensible Brexit outcome were further dashed after a decision to call a snap general election in 2017. On the face of it, few would have called this a mistake at the time. The decision was made. The Conservatives appeared to have a safe double-digit lead in the polls, and only a wafer-thin Commons majority. Given the tougher decisions Brexit would entail, expanding that majority appeared to be a complete no-brainer. The following campaign was something of a complete perfect storm. Some of it was beyond May's control, but much of it was well within hers. The expectation of a Conservative landslide helped Labour, not least, though, giving voters who disliked the idea of Jeremy Corbyn as a Prime Minister the confidence to vote Labour without the concern of this actually happening. The low Labour expectations also likely assisted the party's manifesto. Having been told for 2 years that Labour's leadership could barely tie their own shoelaces, the launch of a seemingly coded manifesto containing many popular policies proved a bigger boost than the good manifesto usually would, and of course expectations matter. The Conservative manifesto, meanwhile, skipped right past the part of trying to win an election part, and instead just jumped straight into trying to manage Conservative backbenchers after an assumed victory. As a result, the 2017 Conservative manifesto contained almost no policies to help candidates and supporters on the doorstep to persuade voters to back the party, but instead contained numerous withdrawals on previous pledges. While Labour promised to nationalise trains and water, the Conservatives withdrew the promise to keep the pension triple lock. Labour pledged free tuition frees, while the Conservatives threatened to take grannies home if she suffered from dementia. May could claim that her manifesto was more responsible than Labour's, and perhaps was making a big bid to fix some of the UK's long-running problems. But by failing to actually win over voters, it weakened May and also taught the authors of the 2019's Tory manifesto not to do anything so stupid or practically to be as honest with voters, instead promising the world and leaving the details for later. The result of the 2017 election left an absolute mess, and instead of a larger majority, May was left with no majority at all, and, faced with the desperate circumstances, only took her option, seen left open to her, an alliance with the DUP, vastly complicating the Brexit deal she was already trying to achieve. Back then, 4 years ago, the Rejoin or the Second Referendum movements were still in their infancy, and Labour had not campaigned on either. If there was either a window to try and chew for a cross-party cooperation, this was it, and they were completely rejected, absolutely out of hand. By trying every party into negotiations, May might have found it possible to get voters later. Instead, she tried to plough through her own course and just force people to do it her way, or to take no deal. With her factions in complete unworkable government coalition, she had absolutely zero hope of passing any non-Brexit legislation, or even gaining any kind of legacy beyond that flagship policy. Tethered to Brexit as her only hope of a way through this absolute mire she had made, May let all the norms and common practice of British politics crumble. For a country without protections of a written constitution, norms are vital, built over the decades if not centuries, but are destroyed in minutes. May might have not only been trying to use these in a limited way, but by setting the precedents that she did, she opened the door for Johnson and Dominic Cummings to do the same, but to far greater extents. Many readers of this newspaper will look back at the Johnson administration and think rightly that May's government looked particularly sensible by comparison, perhaps even if it had been a little bit better in average of the calibre of the ministers, or that with decisions like firing Gavin Williamson over the alleged security leak, a better set of standards. But there can be no escaping the fact that the Johnson administration is an inevitable product of the way May mismanaged her premiership. The assertment 5 years on should match the assessment at the time. May was not good in any sense a good Prime Minister. And I completely 100% agree. There was no way Theresa May was a good Prime Minister. Like I say, she was ultimately, prior to Boris Johnson, the leader and winner of the worst Prime Minister of the UK award. And like I say, that was through her own, complete mismanagement of her own premiership. Like I say, the idea that May could have decided to go after the, disastrous election she had, to go with, rather than just one party deciding Brexit, getting all parties involved in the Brexit negotiations might have been a very good idea, and we almost certainly would not be in this mess today, because If you get all parties involved at that point, then there would have been a very significant portion who would have definitely wanted not only a second referendum, but definitely staying within the customs union and single market. Like I say, that was a platform that Leave ran on, and many people believed that lie. Of course, as we see time and time again, less and less people are starting to believe the fiction that Brexit was all well and good. And as we said before, back in the days of the Iraq War, when everyone was almost in favour of it, now if you went looking for someone who's in favour of the Iraq War, you couldn't find anyone, even though, again, back when the numbers of people who were polled who supported the Iraq War, you should be able to find someone legitimately in favour of it. And of course, as we've said before, people are well entitled to change their minds. So, are we ever going to be entitled to change our mind on Brexit? We don't know. But almost certainly, this Brexit government is in no position to actually ask, or even dare ask that question. So, as always, thanks for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.